What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Ham House Sports. It's Big Matt and Little Matt, and this is episode number 5 on Ham House Sports Guide to Collecting and Investing. And this, we will dive into grading, the grading process, the grading companies, and the grading, just anything that involves grading.
Yep. So grading cards is one of those things in the hobby that a lot of guys kind of go back and forth on. It's the thing you love to hate,
Yes.
right? Guys hate grading companies, but they love grading companies, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think the first thing, Matthew, we should talk about are the different grading companies.
Yes. So there's, I'd say 10, at least, there's probably a couple dozen grading companies that you can send their cards to, but there's 3 major ones that if you're going to grade, I would stick with. That's who we grade with. BGS, which is Beckett, they all made the magazines and the people look their values. So Beckett, PSA, Professional Sports Authentication, that's the top of the top, the cream of the crop, and SGC. SGC specializes in vintage. So this is Beckett. This is a Beckett swab. You can hold that up. So that's Beckett, and they have a 9.5 grade. This is PSA right here. PSA does not have a 9.5 grade.
They do, but they don't give them out much.
PSA does not have a 9.5.
They do. I've seen a PSA 9.5.
No, they don't.
Huh? I have seen a PSA 9.5.
You can show me. I'll bet you $100 they don't have a 9.5.
It doesn't even exist?
No, it doesn't even exist.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Where have you seen a PSA 9.5?
I thought I saw one the other day. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, they don't have a PSA 9.5.
They have mid grades.
They do. Not 9.5 though.
Okay,
they have
gotcha.
8.5. They have 7.5.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. This is a Willie Mays graded by SGC though. So SGC specializes in vintage, I would say.
Yep.
And PSA, I'd say Beckett specializes in modern baseball. PSA specializes in modern basketball and football, and SGC specializes in vintage.
So again, this isn't a slight against other grading companies, but the hobby, the investors, the collectors don't respond as well to cards that are graded by these other companies.
Yes. So also value. If you're trying to maximize your value of your card, I would definitely go with PSA,
Yep.
SGC, or BGS.
Yeah. So PSA has the highest market
Because they have
attractive.
the PSA 10.
Yeah. Well, their marketability and their attractiveness in the market is the highest. They're grading the most cards. They're kind of the big guy. Beckett tends to be key for cards that guys don't think are going to get a 10, but they're not going to get a 9 because they do a mid-grade 9.5. So a lot of guys will go after a Beckett 9.5 to be a little bit higher value than a PSA 9, but not as much value as a PSA 10. They also do a good job with their gold labels on the slabs
And the black labels.
and the gem mint. They also offer subgrades that's really nice. But then Beckett has a feature, like Matthews just said, they'll do black labels.
Which is super rare. That means the card has to be pristine.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah, all 10s on the 4 different grades. So cards are graded based off of 4 characteristics.
Yes.
The card's centering,
Edges,
the card's edges,
corners,
the card's corners,
and circles.
and the card's surface. And so based on how it grades on those 4 determines the overall grade.
Yes.
And like this Joe Burrow camo here is a PSA 9 because of its centering. It's just slightly off-centered, which is still common in modern cards, but was much more common in your vintage cards that were off-centered. And so when you have off-centered vintage cards that have rough edges and sides, they got wrinkles and creases, you get cards that grade much lower. That's like this Willie Mays is a 5.5. It's not uncommon at all to see cards in the vintage era that will grade 1s and 2s, poor quality. Some of those cards were even trimmed with scissors, and they get an authenticated, or they get what's called a qualifier, which it might be a 2 grade, but it says MC, which means it missed cut, or it has MK, which means it has a mark on it. So all of that said, one of the key things about investing in sports cards that is kind of a necessary evil at this point is getting cards graded, right? And so let's use this Jackson Holliday as an example. So Jackson Holliday was the #1 overall pick for the Baltimore Orioles in the 2022 MLB draft. This card, outside of its case, is referred to as a raw card. And
So,
that card
raw card would
Yeah.
be
One of these.
Yeah.
So this is just a picture here. This is Burkhalter. So this card raw, okay, and then this card is graded, okay. This specific card raw would probably sell for about $350, but as a 10, it's sold as high as $1,000 or $800.
No, it's like it sold for $1,000.
Gotcha. So you've got to pay though to change this from a raw card to a graded card of say $30, right?
Yep. And you don't even have a guaranteed chance.
Right. So here's the kicker. You can have this card raw that you bought for $350 and you can pay $30 to get it graded. So
And
now you're into it for $380. If it grades a 9,
it's worth $350.
yep, it's worth less than you've probably paid for it at that moment.
So you're
That's where
thinking-
guys will send it to BGS and maybe hope it gets a 9.5, because then it might be worth $600 and it's worth a little bit more than they paid. But when you hit a 10, the card value goes up significantly. So you almost have to buy cards,
raw, and then
get
send
them
it
graded.
in. That's definitely the best way to make money in the hobby, in my opinion. That's the best way that we've made money. So like our Jason Dominguez, they were raw. We bought them raw. We graded them, and they graded PSA 10s, and we 3x'd our money.
Yep. So you can. This is where you can really do well in the sports card arena, is if you get really good at grading cards. Now, it's a very stressful process.
Another thing that you could do, and grading cards is very stressful, but even more stressful, cracking cards.
Yeah, that's where you've got a card that's maybe in this slab here, and
You
it's a
think it has a chance
9.5, and so you want to switch it over and see if it gets a 10. Huge risk there,
Yes.
because if you crack it out of a 9.5 and it
It's
gets
a
a 9,
The value.
goes down in
If it
value.
gets 10, it probably doubles in value.
Right. So that's where something like this is super helpful. This is a tool called a jeweler's loop. And if you can see here, it's got a light. See the light coming on and off? And then you look through it and it magnifies the card. So we have gotten pretty good at grading cards, so much so that we started grading cards for
Other
people. They would send us cards, we would clean them, and we would send them in to get graded. Our most recent track record is somewhere around 60%.
Oh no, I think
I mean, overall.
no, for ourselves we were like 17 out of 20.
Right, but I'm saying overall,
Oh,
with
overall,
for
we're probably
clients and everything.
70%.
We're probably around 60 to 70% of cards that have graded a 10 of the cards we've
Yes.
sent in. So we've gotten good at recognizing. Now, sometimes it just stinks because you think the card's a perfect 10 and you send it off to get graded.
PSA.
And I've seen them come back 8s
Like,
and
we
7s.
have a buddy who he came over to the house the other day and he told us, he's like, so I sent 23 cards to PSA, right? All 20, and he said these 23 got 9s. He cracked them out, cleaned them, sent them back to PSA, did nothing to them. 19 out of 23 got 10s.
So,
So PSA, it just shows that.
well, it's human error, right? Like you've got different people with
Yeah.
different opinions, and ultimately this is a reality in the sports card market. Is you could have two people look at a card, one person goes it's a 9 and one person goes it's a 10.
Yeah.
And you might get the 9 guy that day, you might get the 10 guy that day. So this is where you can't get too hung up in it, and grading companies are starting to realize that people are cracking out a lot of cards. And so I think they're becoming more stringent on, 10s, and 10 cards are going to have to be like uber pristine. I think that in the hype of the kind of pandemic sports card boom, they were giving out a lot of 10s, because it was getting the hype going and all that kind of stuff. I think the screws are getting tightened down a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you're getting into the game on grading, it's tough. Like I had a buddy reach out the other day. He had some Michael Jordans that he's had since he was a kid. They were in a protective casing. Like here's a great example. So this card, this is a 1982 Donruss Cal Ripken Jr. rookie that I had since I was a kid. It stayed in a protective case for 35 years, and it got a 7 out of 10. And because there's so many of these, the 7 in this card is only worth about $20. And so, it's just a collector's piece for me at this point. But that said, when you get into the grading, be careful on setting your expectations too high. Also, to invest in a jeweler's loop and start looking at the cards under magnification.
Isn't that
Understand?
like $15?
Yes, like 15 bucks.
Honestly, that's the best investment we've made in the hobby.
Understand what the graders are looking for, and know how to kind of get into that. Now, some guys get into cleaning cards and prepping cards. We're just starting to navigate that. I don't know how I feel about it. It can be dangerous because some of the stuff they use can actually damage the card. So I'm not going to make that recommendation. We're still learning there.
Yep.
But anyway, that's kind of it. Do we have anything else for grading?
I think that's it with grading.
All right.